Hello, this is Chris from the Cinema Sci-fi Movie Podcast, and I am back with another solo review on this one for Independence Day Resurgence. This came out 2 weeks ago in the UK, and I did see it the opening weekend it came out. Unfortunately, I was waiting to see if any of the other guys on the channel were going to give this one a watch so we could get a review out, but I think George was originally going to see it with some mates and then they pulled out, so he didn't really get a chance to see it, and Tate just really wasn't fussed by it. So I'm going to try and do my best to give as effective a review as I can when I'm on my own. It's never quite as flowing, I don't find. I do like to have someone else to talk with and have a bit of a back and forth on, but I am going to do my very, very best, so apologies for the slightly later review on this one, but you know what, silver lining, I still made it in time for the 4th of July, and that's all that matters. So as always with these reviews, we start off with a spoiler-free section and then we go into spoilers later on down the line, so I'll give you a warning when we get to the spoilers. So let's talk a bit first about my thoughts on the original Independence Day film and just Roland Emmerich in general. So I actually think we did an Independence Day review for Film Club last year. Film Club was a show where after we did our main review of the week, so like a big new release that came out, we would recommend a film each week that tied in somehow to that film. And I can't remember what the film was we were going off, but I think Independence Day was one of them. And I haven't actually watched the movie since then. Part of me was going to give it another watch before this one, but I thought it's pretty standard, you know. It's aliens show up, want to destroy the world, destroy all the famous landmarks in the US, and the humans fight them back and save the day. Spoiler alert for the first Independence Day movie. So I really didn't think there was any need for me to go back and give that one a watch. If I'm trying to remember my thoughts on it, I should have actually watched our review before this, but I remember not being too fussed about it, but then again, I didn't watch it when it first came out. The first Independence Day came out in 1996, and we had Jurassic Park in 93. So this was really 3 years into the big boom in new CGI animation. I know that it had come out before then, but Jurassic Park was kind of the big pillar in just what demonstrated and what could be done with visual effects. And Independence Day was one of the many disaster movies of that year. If you think about it, you had other films such as Twister, you had Dante's Peak, Volcano, all other kinds of movies like that were kind of copycatting off this one, or they all cropped up around the same time, because, you know, effects were new, and it opened up a lot of possibilities for filmmakers to do these big, over-the-top blockbuster films. And in my opinion, the first Independence Day, although I didn't love it, I can acknowledge it and see why many aspects of it are fairly iconic. I do think it has achieved that iconic status, especially the scene with the White House getting destroyed. Everyone remembers the dog jumping through the air, dodging the fireball from the UFO. There are a lot of moments in it like that I do remember, and I think there are some famous lines as well with Will Smith's character, for example, with Welcome to Earth. So I do think it has achieved that iconic status in the genre it's in a summer popcorn shoveling entertainment explosion filled fun. I didn't love the first one, but I have that appreciation for it for what it did. Roland Emmerich, oh boy, this guy knows how to put a trailer together. I'll say that about him. So if we look back at a few of his films in his past, in his filmography, we had the 1998 Godzilla, which I remember distinctly seeing at the cinema when I was a kid. I'm going to show my age now. I would have been 5 when that came out. And I loved Godzilla in it, but I remember the film boring me even as a kid. And then since then, he did other films such as The Day After Tomorrow, 10,000 BC, all not very great movies, if I'm being honest. So with this one, I kind of knew what I was about to get into. I did a bunch of reactions on the trailers for this one, Independence Day Resurgence, and as far as I can recall, I said that I thought it looks fun. I knew it was going to be just schlocky, terrible, over the top, just destruction non-stop to end, but I thought the trailers looked entertaining enough. I thought I was going to get a kick out of Jeff Goldblum's performance, because that guy, he is Jeff Goldblum. He has become his own meme at this point, so I was kind of excited for that, although I knew exactly what kind of film it was going to be. And oh boy, my initial impressions on this one, this may be, and I haven't seen every film obviously this year, but so far this might be the worst film I've had the misfortune of seeing on the big screen. It was terrible. I hated it, and I'm glad that I'm not the only one, because I thought I was going to be one against the masses on this one, as I usually am with my immensely popular opinions on films, but I really don't think this film's doing well too far. I know in the US, I'm not sure if it's hit number one now at the box office or not, but Finding Dory's already out in the US. We don't get it until the 29th of July. I actually thought it was this week, so if you watch my last few reaction videos, I kept saying that Finding Dory's out this week. No, we've still got another month to wait for that. The end of this month, 29th of July, we get that one. And I think that Finding Dory still knocked it off the top spot for the second week running in the US. And I'm looking at the budget now against how much it's made, and the budget was done on $165 million. So far it's made 176.1. So it has made a profit in terms of how much it actually costs to make the movie, but as we always say, the marketing and the advertisements really do count for a lot of the cost. In some cases you have to almost double the budget of the movie, so whether it will make an outright profit, I'm not sure. I don't want it to. I really don't want it to. This was terrible in nearly every single way, and the biggest offense of this movie really for me was that I went in with the attitude of, I know this movie's not going to be very good, but I'm going to be entertained by all the destruction and everything like that, and I just really wasn't. I was just bored all the way through, and the movie sits at a very comfortable 2 hours, I believe. Just slightly over 2 hours, which, is pretty, general length for a movie is 2 hours. Even in some cases now, movies are starting to creep up to 2 hours 20, 2.5 hours. But this was a comfortable 2 hours, so I thought, it's going to be easy enough sit. It's going to be very paint by the numbers. It's going to have a very easy 3-act structure. Just get to the end, 2 hours, boom, done, get in, get out, and the film will be somewhat of a success. But this 2 hours felt like 4 to me. I wanted to leave. I honestly wanted to leave. I wanted to get up about halfway through and just walk out. I know I'm being immensely critical on this film, but we're going to go into it more now. So the plot of IMDb reads, 2 decades after the first Independence Day invasion, Earth is faced with a new extrasolar threat, but will mankind's new space defenses be enough? So one thing I actually saw from the trailers on this, and this isn't giving anything away, was that I actually thought that the 20-year jump between the two films kind of worked for it. I do think that perhaps this movie is about 15 years too late, perhaps. I think that Independence Day is a film so just made out of its time. It's complete 90s nonsense, and it's great for it in that respect. I don't know anyone that was clamoring for this film, or if there was any interest now in a sequel, because it kind of, the first Independence Day did sit very comfortably as its own movie. I'm not really sure if there was a massive outcry for a sequel, or if the fan base was even still there for it for this one. Maybe there was some nostalgia for someone, but from general opinions I was seeing on the internet and people's thoughts, not many people were excited for this one, which is strange as well, because you are bringing in a lot of the main cast back. Jeff Goldblum's back, Bill Pullman, you've got Judd Hirsch, and also other side characters as well, like you've got Vivica A. Fox and Brett Spiner as well as the scientist guy. They're all back in this, but with a notable exception of a Will Smith. And Will Smith was making his demands. He wanted loads and loads of money for this film, and Roland Emmerich and the studio weren't prepared to give him that much, so he went, you know what, I won't be in your movie then. So this movie picks up without a Will Smith in it, and they've killed his character off, and it was kind of hilarious because when the studio announced that, okay, we're killing Will Smith's character off, Will Smith was like, oh well, no, you didn't have to kill my character off, implying that, if the money was right, he would have come back for it. But they were like, no, you made your decision, we're killing your character off now. But although I don't think Will Smith would have saved this movie, his absence is noticeable throughout this film. The cast who do return, it's nice to see because it does give you that continuity with the first one and makes it feel part of this universe. But Will Smith, say what you want about him, he might be big-headed, he might make all his demands, but he is one of the most charismatic film leads in all of Hollywood, I say. Maybe not so much now, but certainly back in the day, this guy was just full of charisma, and he was enjoyable to watch in his films. It's one of the only reasons I like the Wild Wild West movie that he made. You look at Men in Black, for example, or Bad Boys. He does have that persona, and I think that was really, really lacking in this film, and they tried to replace him almost with two characters, actually, because his personality is almost split into two characters in this film. You have the main character of Liam Hemsworth, who's kind of the hotshot pilot, and I've said this before, but with Liam Hemsworth, you get what you're given. He isn't a very charismatic lead. He tries. I don't know if it's a case of the material's not there, but you just really don't get much of a range from him. He is a very one-note actor, and he's definitely not the worst thing in this movie, but as a lead, he just did absolutely nothing for me. And then you also have the character of Dylan Dubrow Hiller, which is the son of Will Smith's character from the first one, played by Jesse Usher, and he very much is trying to recapture the spark of those Will Smith moments from the first movie, and to me, it's an impossible task. It is an impossible task to do without a Will Smith there. And other characters in this film, okay, one of my biggest problems with this film is the characters. And you can have all this destruction in a movie, you can make it look as visually stunning as you want with all the crazy visual effects we've got now, but I need to have a shred, like just the smallest amount of wanting to care, whether that's for the events that are going on or for the characters involved. You've got to give me that little bit of investment so that when all this destruction's happening, I'm on the ride for it doesn't have to be a lot. It really doesn't have to be a lot of character moments, but I need to have something to go on this journey with these characters for when all this destruction's happening, there's some tension, there's some gravity to it. And I kind of did get that with the first one. Sure, the first one was very bloated. It had a lot of characters. It really, really didn't need that many characters in it. It could have very easily been whittled down. This one is even worse, I would say, in that regard. There are so many characters. There are so many subplots. Subplots that don't amount to anything. There's a whole subplot, without giving anything away, there's a whole subplot with Judd Hirsch in it, who plays Jeff Goldblum's dad in it, and it amounts to absolutely nothing. There's a lot of characters in it that are just kind of sidelined for comic relief, and they're just not funny. The script's not funny. They're irritating every time they're on screen. Brett Spiner, who played the scientist in the first film, although I've only seen the film once and that was last year, I remember him being fairly endearing. Like he was just there. He had the odd moment of levity. He dropped the one-liner in here and there. In this film, he is used so much, and it's just cringeworthy, and it's not funny, and he's trying to be, and it feels really desperate. And if I'm going to compare this movie to anything in that regard in terms of the characters, it really reminds me of a Michael Bay Transformers movie, especially like Age of Extinction, was it the fourth one? Really reminds me of that. If you think to that movie, there are so many characters in it you just don't give a shit about, and there's just awkward comedy, and it's strained, and you're seeing these actors and you just know that they're better than that. You've seen them do it better, and you've seen them do it better in the first Independence Day movie, and in this it's kind of embarrassing and sad to watch. And it's another one of those cases where you get a sequel to a movie that comes out 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, after the fact, and they're really trying to capture the magic of that first one, but it just feels really old and tired. It feels as old and tired as Bill Pullman looks in this movie. And but you know what? I've actually got to defend Bill Pullman in this. He's one of the only actors in this entire film, probably him and William Fichtner, who are actually trying with this material. They are trying so hard. I'd love Bill Pullman as an actor. That guy does not do enough acting nowadays. It was amazing to watch. I've seen him obviously in the first Independence Day and in Casper as well. I've seen him in a bunch of films when I was growing up, and he was always great. And it is nice when you get these older actors back, these lesser known actors at this point in time, to come back for a movie like this and see them on the big screen again. But it is also, it's the double-edged sword. It is depressing on the other hand when the movie is terrible and, they're really, really trying and they're just getting nothing out of this material at all. So for me, the biggest offense in this movie is just the characters and the sheer number of them. There really doesn't need to be that amount of characters in a film called Independence Day Resurgence, where it's about aliens invading the Earth and a team have to try and stop them. You really don't need all these side characters and awkward comedy, and it's bloated. It feels bloated, and the editing in this movie, because there are so many characters in it, you'll go for long stretches without coming back to a character to the point where you almost forget about them, and then it will come back to them, and then you have to kind of remind yourself of what was their last scene and how did their last scene end and where they are at that point in the story. It just feels too sparse. And you know what? I think Jeremy Jahns mentioned this in his review, and I completely agree with it. Like, the start of the film in the first Independence Day immediately starts with that UFO coming to Earth. And in this film, we go for about half hour or more where we just get nothing. It's just these awkward character moments non-stop all the way through. You're not caring about any of the characters at all. And it's just really boring to watch. Then when the aliens do show up, you've gone throughout this the whole first act really without any of the aliens showing up, and it just feels tired. It feels weightless, and it almost feels like a direct-to-TV movie in some parts. It really, really, really does. And Jeff Goldblum, okay, we've got to talk the Goldblum in this one, because as I said at the start, Jeff Goldblum is usually amazing. He's become his own meme. He's you see everyone, almost like Christopher Walken at this point, everyone tries to do an impression of him. You see him on these TV adverts for what is it? Is it like internet, like broadband or something? And he's great. He always gets a laugh. He looks so bored in this movie. And if I wanted to come out of this movie with nothing else, I wanted to say that, oh, well, the movie was bad, but, Jeff Goldblum was hilarious. He really isn't. He feels like he's sleepwalking through his role. He doesn't even feel like David from the first movie. He is playing himself at this point, but when he plays himself in a really on-the-nose, self-aware way, it takes away the funniness of it. So I really didn't care for him in this movie, and this is the thing, I'm repeating myself so much in this, but character plays such an integral role in these kind of films. And I know what people are going to be saying. They're going to be saying, oh, well, you don't like these kind of movies, these high action-filled CGI disaster movies. And that's not true. I do like a bunch. Twister is probably one of my favourite guilty pleasure movies from the 90s. And I can remember everyone in that movie. You've got Helen Hunt, Bill Paxton, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Cary Elwes. There are so many memorable characters in that movie. And it's not a good movie, but it's so enjoyable to watch. And even if we're not just looking at the disaster genre, if we go back and we just look at other schlocky action movies, I've always keep saying I'm a huge lover of movies from the 80s, and you give me any Arnold Schwarzenegger or Stallone movie, I absolutely love. Commando, Cobra, The Running Man, Red Heat, Predator, just all the Rambo films, all that kind of stuff I absolutely love. So I can go into movies like this with the attitude of knowing that I'm just in it for entertainment purposes. It's not going to win any Oscars. It's not trying to be that. It's just trying to do what it does, but it does it with charm. It does it with interesting characters. It does it with funny one-liners, everything like that. And this movie just had none of that charm from movies like this that it's trying to be, that came out in the 90s, and it seems like a phase that's really just petered out at this point. And if we get onto the action and CGI in this now, because I've ragged on the characters enough, but if we get onto the action and CGI, again, like, one of the biggest draws of this movie based on the trailer, and I actually said this when I did my reactions, was that the action is so very samey from what we've seen. I mean, it looks great, sure. I mean, there are some shaky bits with the CGI in this film, but the big one you see in the trailer of London getting destroyed, very, very, very small bit of this film, actually. It's really not the big focal centerpiece you think it would be from the trailer. It's over in a matter of minutes, and the whole city being pulled up into the clouds, into some kind of machine, we've seen it loads. We've seen it in Man of Steel, Watchmen, X-Men Apocalypse, Transformers Age of Extinction, Age of Ultron. We've seen it in loads of these movies, and the visual is just old to me now. There's not really any tension or dread, and even the destruction, in my opinion, looks better in the first Independence Day film, because you know what, in that film they actually blew up some real stuff. Yes, there was effects work here and there, but all of the destruction, especially the White House, looks so realistic, because you know what, I haven't seen the behind the scenes footage, but it may have been a miniature, or they may have built like a prop White House and blew that up, and it looks great. It still stands up to this day. There is something that's just so iconic about that one shot from Independence Day. You see it on all the countdowns, you see it in all the trailers, of that one shot of the White House getting destroyed, and it looks great. In this, all the visuals just blend in with every other kind of big budget CGI film blockbuster we get nowadays. So that whole aspect has gone from the movie. So you're left without the charming characters from the first one. You're left without the destruction that's the biggest draw of these kind of movies, these big disaster movies. So, you know, what are you left with? You're left with just a shell of a tired movie. But, you know, I mentioned this earlier as well when I was talking about Jurassic Park, but the whole CGI boom of the early to mid-90s wowed audiences because they hadn't seen things like this before. Now, as viewers, we are kind of spoiled. The things that we can do now with visual effects are unparalleled. We can pretty much do anything at this stage, and you know, technology is always advancing, textures are getting better. You look back at some of the 90s films with some CGI and the textures just look really, really bad, or they don't hold up well, with some exceptions. Films such as Terminator 2 Judgment Day still look great, and the original Jurassic Park looks good as well, because they blend it so seamlessly. And this film just absolute complete reliance on visual effects. There are a number of scenes where characters, you can obviously tell they're standing in front of a green screen, and the backgrounds just look really bad, like the lighting, they don't match up. So it just feels a lot of the time like they're on a soundstage with a green screen behind them, and it looks so fake. There's no realism to this film. And I know in shots where you've got all your fighter planes flying at your UFO, you can't really do all of that with models and miniatures because it would be ridiculously expensive. But I mean, when someone's like in a hangar or something, or like in a desert, don't just like whack a green screen up behind them. Actually try and get them to the location if you can. You know, it just makes so much of a difference, and it doesn't match up in visuals between the first one and this one, which is a real shame, because I think that they could have used so much more real stuff in this movie, especially with the aliens as well. Although the design of the aliens is a bit samey and a bit wonky in the first movie, but you know, everyone remembers that moment where the alien bursts out of the spaceship and Will Smith just punches it and says "Welcome to Earth," sits down, lights a cigar. It's an amazing moment, and those aliens were puppets. They were real. And you know, that was not by 90s standards, so today I'm sure you could do a much more impressive animatronic with the aliens, but when they're all just these shiny, sleek CGI models reacting with the humans, there's just no real sense of tension or realism in anything that's going on, and that's a problem for me. I mean, when you look at this film as well with the action in a number of scenes, especially the big destruction scene, we've seen it all before at this stage, as I said, with films such as X-Men Apocalypse, and more recently with these kind of devices, but even in films such as San Andreas and Roland Emmerich's earlier film 2012, we've seen it, and there's even a sequence in this, and I'm not giving anything away because this was in the trailers, but there's a scene where Liam Hemsworth is piloting a spaceship throughout the destruction as it's falling back down towards Earth, and it almost feels like they've just slapped a new skin on 2012, because I swear to God there was a scene where, was it John Cusack in that movie? Where he gets in like a biplane and he's trying to take off and he's flying through all the wreckage and things like that. It's almost identical to that, so on an action standpoint, did absolutely nothing for me and just added to the reason I was completely bored with this movie. So I'll go into positives and negatives now and then give my overall recommendation or lack of before I move into spoilers. So my positive on this film is only down to a couple of the performances in this film. Bill Pullman, as I said, is really, really trying. And I actually think that Maika Monroe, who plays the daughter of Bill Pullman in this film, the former first daughter, I actually thought she was really good. And how the film plays out, she should have been the main character. And I actually think that this film could have been a lot more interesting, both character-wise and to utilise Bill Pullman a bit more, if she had have been the main character. In this film, she plays a fighter pilot, but she's really just kind of in the background here and there, and is there as a device of your typical, oh, Liam Hemsworth needs to get back to his fiancée. That's all she is in the movie for, and it's such a shame, because I think if she'd have been the main character, you could have really, really played on that father-daughter relationship. Bill Pullman being the ex-president and warning of bad tidings to come, where the UFOs would return. No one's believing him. Everyone thinks he's crazy. And his daughter's there, to support him, and she could be the one to fly in the fighter jets at the end. I think that would have been a really, really cool twist and a good stepping off point after the events of the first one. If I'm going to give one other positive thing in this film, it would be sort of how the film starts off in terms of its setting. We get this really, really neat look at how the humans have utilized the alien technology from the first one and have essentially built like a sci-fi base in modern day USA, and it's kind of great. You've got spaceships flying around. They've got these huge, massive space age plasma screens and weaponry they've got now. And I actually thought that, you know what, if this is continuing after the other ones, you got 20 years pass by, you've got some alien tech lying around, sure, pick it up, try and rework it, and use it for your own gain. So humans are like super advanced in this movie in terms of technology, and that was actually kind of great to see, and I like that setting. But for me, the negative is pretty much just everything else. The action doesn't excite. It feels overly long. There's pointless subplots in it. Character blow out the ass in this movie. There's just so many characters you could get rid of. Hardly any of the performances are any decent. There's just no investment, so it just makes for a really, really miserable experience. I've seen some people say that it is the kind of action schlock they enjoy, though. It's just really, really dumb entertainment. And I love some dumb entertainment, but this was just abysmal to me. This was like Transformers level humor. It was horrible. It actually, you know what? I actually think that Transformers might even be better than this movie. Don't quote me on that. I'm unsure of my thoughts on this movie just yet, because Transformers is kind of just ruining one of my favorite childhood cartoons, so there is that. But this is very, very much in the same vein as that kind of movie. So if I am going to recommend this movie, if you do like films such as Transformers and things like that in 2012, where you can just go in, switch your brain off, watch some CGI play out on the screen with little character investment, then sure, go knock yourself out, go and see it. You might even enjoy it. But to me, if you're a fan of the original and you're interested in checking this one out, I would be apprehensive, because it really, really doesn't capture the magic of the first one. And the first one is a dumb popcorn action movie, but to me, there's just a little bit more charm in that first one. There's a little bit more charisma, and there's just a little bit more to remember from it. And this one really doesn't have anything like this. It really seems like the grand scheme of audiences are already avoiding this film or just don't care about it. We're into July now. The end of July, we're getting film after film after film of new releases. So I think that is going to very, very easily push this movie out of the top 5. And I just don't think it's going to be remembered. And it's kind of hilarious as well, because literally the very, very end of this movie, without giving anything away, completely sequel baits. It's one of the most blatant cases of sequel baiting I've ever seen. Now, whether it will actually get a sequel, I really, really don't know. But based on how much this movie has made currently, 2 weeks into its initial run already, and it's hardly made anything, so I don't think we'll get a sequel. So that was the spoiler-free sections. We're going to move into spoilers now. Because I'm on my own, I'm going to rattle through this pretty quickly. Again, apologies if this review isn't as good as some of our other ones. The solo ones are never really easy to do, so again, apologies if there's not much structure to it. But I'm going to try and get through this as quick as I can and try and hit on some of the spoiler areas now. So I guess I kind of gave this away in the spoiler-free section, but it's not a massive film-breaking spoiler. So you've got Bill Pullman's character in it, and we pick up this movie, he's rocking this absolutely like crazy Gandalf beard, and he has pretty much gone almost insane. He is in this weird catatonic state after the first... The very first scene of this movie is this sort of transmission through space, and it's kind of hilarious because we get actual film footage of clips from the first Independence Day movie, and it's almost like the aliens are watching the actual film Independence Day, which is kind of surreal. But you've got Bill Pullman waking up from a nightmare, and the events of the first movie have really aged this guy. Like, it has plagued on his mind for 20 years still. They beat them back at the end of the first movie, but you can tell that he is still haunted by them, and he preaches of tidings that they're going to come back. They're going to come back with a bigger force. That's kind of the motto for this movie as well. I should have mentioned that in spoiler free, but this movie really is, we need to do everything bigger. We need a bigger ship. We need a bigger budget. We need bigger action, just everything bigger, and bigger isn't always better in cases like this with some movies. But Bill Pullman, and this is what I said in the spoiler free, Bill Pullman is without a doubt one of the best things in this movie. He's really, really trying, and with it continuing on from the other one, this is one of the continuations I really liked. I liked where we pick up his character, and I thought that was a really cool way to bring the character back. However, they just really don't do enough with him. There's really long stretches where we never see him, and then he comes back at the end and says, it's kind of following on from the Randy Quaid plot line from the first one, where he's like, I will fly the ship and sacrifice myself, because initially his daughter wants to get in the fighter plane and he's going against it. He says, no, you need to live. I'm an old man. I need to do this. I was the president back in the day. It's my duty. You've got to survive. Really, really cheesy stuff. Gets in the plane, and he does sacrifice himself, not before giving another speech similar to his one from the first Independence Day film. Nowhere near as good or as memorable. They do like to bring that speech up he made in that first film quite a lot in this movie. The film opens with it, with the footage from Independence Day. They keep bringing it up throughout the movie as well, and it's a great speech from the first one. It's a great, great fist-bumping, cheesy moment. It's almost like Armageddon, in my opinion, the first Independence Day film. Both aren't very good, but they're enjoyable for what they are. But just how all over the place this movie is with its editing and how many characters there are, we really don't get any time to dwell on his death. Like, it kind of happens, and then you're sitting there questioning, like, well, did he make it out of it? Or is it going to come back to him? Is anyone going to mourn his loss? There's none of that downtime after he dies, and it's really kind of awkward because, you go to Randy Quaid's character in the first one, and they save it for the big moment at the end where he takes out the ship. Whereas this one happens about the 3/4 mark, I would say, or just after the halfway point. And it doesn't linger on it, and it's such a shame because he was one of the biggest characters in the first movie. He was the goddamn president of the United States, and he was a fairly big draw in this film as well, and it's a shame how quickly they get rid of him. Okay, so I'm going to get into the aliens plan now as well. So initially, this weird spherical iPod-looking ball spaceship flies through space, and this was probably one of my favourite moments in the film because this did have some tension. It's something we hadn't seen before in Independence Day, so as a viewer, you are questioning what it is, and they're saying that it's an alien spacecraft, and they're deciding, generals and the president are talking, and they're talking back and forth with Jeff Goldblum, and Jeff Goldblum's like, let's see what it wants, let's see if it talks, let's see if we can talk it out so we don't start another war, because he's like, if we shoot this thing down, we could be starting a war with a whole other race of aliens that are bigger than the last one. And the president decides to shoot it down, and they shoot it down, and this was a great moment. I love that back and forth, that kind of ethical debate between the two. So they uncover this sphere, and I'm kind of jumping forward now because like a whole bunch of destruction happens between this point and when they get it back, but they finally get it back, and this thing looks like the if anyone remembers the movie A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I think came out in 2005, you've got Alan Rickman's character of Marvin the Robot, and this thing, this ball is literally that character's head from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's almost uncanny. I thought it then, and it's a complete copy of that. It's like a cross between Eva from WALL-E and the head of Marvin from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So this thing is apparently another race of aliens that were victim to the main aliens attack many, many years ago, and it's the sole survivor of that planet. And since then, it's gone from settlement to settlement to try and take on survivors from other planets that the bad aliens have destroyed. And it's almost like a Noah's Ark thing, and to create a planet, a settlement where all these survivors can live in harmony. And this thing was traveling to Earth to try and take some of Earth's survivors away. And I thought, you know what, initially that's cool, but then they do some really, really out of place comic relief with it, with Brett Spiner's character, who is way overused in this movie. And then you've got the other scientist guy, and then there's this, I can't remember names in this film because there's too many characters. Then there's this annoying fuckwit of an agent, like a secretary to defense or something. I don't even know who he was. He just sort of like tags along with Jeff Goldblum at the start of the movie, and he's there for some more awkward comedy throughout the movie. And then there's also this African warlord with machetes, and then he has some kind of back and forth with him, and he wants to try and be a great warrior like this warlord, and it's just, oh god, it's all over the place. So the aliens show up finally. You've got this whole subplot of like the scientists trying to work out what this ball is and how to get it open and how to get it working, and etc. Aliens finally show up, and they're bigger than ever, and their plan is to drill into the core of the Earth. Now we find out, I guess they kind of go back and fill in one of the plot holes from the first one. I mean, the first one, the aliens just show up and just start destroying everything, but apparently there was one that landed, and it was trying to drill into the Earth to take away the magma to power their ships, I guess, or to use it as fuel. I can't exactly remember what it is, but they want to drill into the core of the Earth anyway. So this ship plants itself right in the heart of the Atlantic Ocean and starts drilling. And this is our ticking clock. This is our countdown throughout the whole movie. We can't let it reach the Earth's core, otherwise the world is destroyed. And then, throughout this film, you've got like a spaceship coming across the water. It's pulling all boats up into the air, apart from Judd Hirsch, who, as I said earlier, is playing the role of Jeff Goldblum's dad. He was in the first movie. He is enjoying his retirement. He is chilling on a yacht in the water. And oh no, he doesn't realise that the spaceship is behind him for comedy relief. And then when he notices it, he starts driving this boat. It's this awful CGI boat as this spaceship's chasing him. And it's pulling up water and everything around it. But for some reason, it's not going to get Judd Hirsch. He's just staying ahead of that tidal wave. And then he gets caught up in the tidal wave, rides the wave, survives it, and then ends up landing on a roof. It's so over the top. And this again, it's like video game physics. I mean, the first one, for what I can remember, there was no kind of moments where I went like, well, that could never happen. Like, maybe the dog part was a little on the nose, but other than that, there's no parts where I kind of went, oh, that defied physics. There was a lot of things that defied logic, but there was nothing that defied physics. This was so video gamey. And it's like Peter Jackson's Hobbit movies as well. There are moments where the action is really gritty and it feels real. And then, especially in the Hobbit movies, you'll get a bit that's just so over the top. For like the barrel sequence, if anyone remembers that from Desolation of Smaug, where physics just stop and it starts living in its own existence, and it feels just way over the top video gamey, and it takes you out of the movie because you know that all these characters are going to survive because there's just no tension anymore. There's absolutely zero tension, and it's really, really annoying because if it is a destruction movie, tension and the want for characters to survive is a big part of it. And when they're just defying physics and just defying the logic of the situation and just get out of it unscathed every single time, it's just really, really annoying. And then after this part, there's this whole subplot where there's like a car full of kids, survivors, like this family, and they're driving and they find Judd Hirsch on this boat in the wreckage of a roof, and they go up to him and they rescue him and save him. And then he just kind of tags along with them, and it's this whole like parallel story where you've got all this alien destruction happening with Jeff Goldblum, Bill Pullman, or Liam Hemsworth, all the fighter pilots, etc. And then it'll just cut back awkwardly to Judd Hirsch just dicking around in a school bus or just driving, and you watch it, you could literally, I mean, I edit in my spare time. I'd consider myself an editor, and when I watch movies now, I don't just watch movies. I look at all scenes, and if there are any example of wasted scenes, and I think like, I could have cut that, I could have trimmed that. That was an awkward transition, I would correct that. So when I was watching this movie, I was literally thinking, if I was sitting down to edit this, I would cut all of Judd Hirsch's scenes out, and it would affect the plot in no way at all. He's there for awkward comic relief, and it's just not funny in the first place. It's just really cringeworthy to watch. And, that would have really just sped the movie up, or at least a little bit. I mean, as I said, it's 2 hours, but it feels so much longer. moments like this, scenes like this are just absolutely wasted, and it's just pointless. There are whole entire stretches and subplots and characters that amount to absolutely nothing and are pointless, and this is what I say, it should have really been trimmed down and just focus on the core cast of this film. So, I mean, later on into the film, they discover that the head of the alien force has a queen alien. I mean, at this point, it's almost like ripping off Aliens at this point with the queen alien. And it's very simple. It's like, take down the queen, you take down the fleet. So apparently in the first Independence Day film, although they didn't realise it, the ship they beat at the end is one that's home to a queen alien. So they destroyed that in that movie, and that's when they save the day. And they try and do the same in this, but as I said, bigger, they have to go bigger. The queen alien is huge. It's absolutely just multi-stories high, stomping around all over the place, and the alien queen basically wants to get this sphere that crash landed because it's the only thing that could possibly stop her. So it's trying to get that. It wipes out the president of the United States, and William Fichtner is sworn and is now the president of the United States, and he is the only reason I would even consider seeing a sequel to this movie, because you know what, William Fichtner is great. Even if he's in a bad movie like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, he always turns in as good a performance as he possibly can. And he is great in this movie. He's intense as the general, and then, as I said, becomes president really, really quickly. He's just like, yeah, no, I'm cool with this. Let's do this thing. I'm patriotic enough for America. Let's do it. So, I mean, all this boils down to the fighter pilots at the end are just trying to blow up the queen. They're just trying to shoot at it, but it's got its shields up. They need to take down the shield so they can get a clear shot. And then they get caught up in the alien fleet because all the alien ships are sort of like controlled by the queen. They have to break out of that, blow up the queen, do that. Everything's right. And literally the very end of this movie is, as I said, sequel bait. It's the biggest sequel bait I've ever seen. You've got Brett Spiner runs up and says, like, we've found all this technology and we've located the base of the aliens and we finally have all this tech. Now we can take the fight to them. So if it does get to a third one, I guess we're going to have interstellar travel and we're going to have the humans flying into space to take the fight to them. It's just completely ridiculous. And then it cuts to black and I'm just laughing at the screen like, oh, Independence Day Resurgence, it's so cute that you think you're going to get a sequel to this, and they're so not. At least I hope not. It's made slightly over its budget now, but I really don't think it's going to make enough clout to warrant another one. So that's kind of it for spoilers, really. There's just a lot of incidental little bits, and, you know, I apologise if the flow of this is kind of all over the place, or if this review hasn't been as engrossing as some other ones. It has been 2 weeks since I went to see this film, so my memory is a little hazy on it, and literally the film ended, and it felt like I'd almost forgotten the movie there and then. I just really, really didn't care. Recommendation, as I said, if you like these kind of movies, these big CGI filled 2012 style ones, you know, go and see it. You might be entertained enough, but for me, I want my dumb action movies to have just a little bit more. I want some likable characters in there. I need some kind of suspension of disbelief when it comes to the tension. I need that in a movie to get the full enjoyment out of it. And this, as I said at the start, is probably the worst film I have seen all year so far. There are many, many more films to come. I guess that'll do it for my review on Independence Day Resurgence. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let me know what you thought of Independence Day Resurgence. Let me know what you thought of the first Independence Day, and let me know what your favourite disaster movie is. Just basically anything you like. I try to reply to all of you guys' comments. Again, apologies that this is a solo review, but I did want to get a review out for this film in some way, shape or form. Hopefully when the next film rolls out, we'll have the guys back on and we can get another group review out for that one. This week is The Legend of Tarzan, so I will be seeing that towards the end of the week. I don't know if George or Tate are seeing that one, but hopefully someone can get to see it so we can get a group review on that one. July has now hit, so by the end of this month the reviews will be coming in thick and fast. We're in the heart of summer movie season. We've got films like BFG, we've got Star Trek, we've got Finding Dory, so much coming out, so please do hit that subscribe button. It is the best way to keep updated with all of our content as we bring you more film reviews this month. month. There'll be reactions from me as well whenever a new trailer comes out. I do try and jump on for all the major trailers that come out. The Sully trailer has come out a couple of days ago with Tom Hanks, the new Clint Eastwood movie, so I will be jumping on a reaction for that probably tomorrow. I'll try and get that out to you guys tomorrow. And yeah, now Game of Thrones is finished. We should be focusing more just on films and film reviews and things like that, so please do stay tuned to the channel because there's a lot of exciting things coming up. Also, at the end of this month, I believe it's the 31st of July, we'll be doing episode 4 of Timestamp Zero, which is the show where we put a vote out to you guys and you get to vote on which film we watch as a commentary. We basically all sit down on a live stream and just talk the movie. It's a really, really good experience. We just got done with John Carpenter's The Thing. That were my choices. Now it's back to Tate with his list of films. You can find the link to get voting on that on the straw poll in the description below. Please do get your votes in. Already, I think we've had like 14 votes on it. The votes are very, very close. There's no all-out winner yet, so please do get your votes in for that. So we've got a winner for the end of the month for that. So for those of you in America, happy Independence Day, happy 4th of July, and until the next video, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.